Hello everyone. This is going to be another video in the Phobias series, and it's going to have a lot to do with the PTSD and phobias in relation to that. But it's going to also cover a little bit of information that I've already covered in case someone doesn't watch the other videos. Specific phobias are complex psychological issues that are not completely understood in the medical field. From existing research, experts know that they can be caused by a number of different factors, including genetic predisposition. Some individuals may not have a specific environmental cause for their phobia, but in many cases, the fear can be caused by a traumatic event. Phobias are characterized by an intense fear of a specific situation or things that may be associated with a traumatic experience. The fear often becomes unreasonable and triggers severe anxiety whenever the person is confronted with their phobia, even if they are not in any danger. People can have phobias about a wide variety of things, such as dogs, spiders, heights, and many others depending on their personal issues. When someone develops a phobia, it can occur in different ways, but it typically develops at some point in their childhood. Phobias are distinct from normal childhood fears, which tend to diminish over time because they can actually grow more intense as they get older. Normal childhood fears can be eased by appropriate reassurance, but phobias will continue to persist in spite of the child being told that there is no danger in the situation. If a child does not get professional help for their phobia, it can continue into adulthood as they continue to avoid what they are afraid of to prevent an anxiety attack. Their reaction to being exposed to their phobia is often uncontrollable, and their instinct is to stay away as much as possible. However, avoiding exposure to the phobia will prevent it from ever being resolved. Some symptoms of the phobias. As someone is exposed to their personal phobia, they will have a very strong mental and physical reaction that become overwhelming. They could exhibit any number of these symptoms: increased heart rate, sweating and trembling, hot flashes or chills, difficulty breathing, nausea, dizziness or feeling faint, feeling of dread, fear of dying. When a person is confronted with their phobia, they become paralyzed by these symptoms and their feelings of fear. More complex phobias like agoraphobia, which is fear of public spaces, and other social phobias can make it very difficult to lead a normal and healthy life. Trauma and phobias. Many phobias develop because the person has a traumatic experience that they begin to associate with the object of their fear. If a child is attacked by a dog when they are young, then they might be afraid of every single dog that they come across as they grow up. Someone who has an experience whether they almost drowned might develop a phobia of water. In some cases, even observing a traumatic event can cause someone to develop a phobia. If they witness a terrible traffic accident where someone is covered in blood, they later may have a phobia of blood, cars, or busy intersections. Phobias tend to become more severe when a person deliberately avoids a situation or thing that they are afraid of. The more a person avoids their phobia, the less opportunity they will have to prove to themselves that this is not as dangerous as they believe. Avoiding the situation will allow the fear to build up, and the negative assumptions about the phobia will continue to grow. Even for those who have not had a traumatic experience associated with their phobia, the same type of avoidance is often what causes the phobia to become out of control. Now, in my other video, I already talked a little bit about exposure therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, so I'm not going to go over that part again. If anybody wants more information on that, then just comment and I'll do a whole video specific to that. Now, post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, is the most common mental health disorder in people who have suffered severe trauma, such as from a natural disaster. However, some studies show that the risk of other anxiety disorders, including phobias, is also elevated in the months following serious trauma. Additionally, some of the symptoms of PTSD can mirror those of phobias, making diagnosis more difficult. Here is what you should know about post-traumatic stress disorder syndrome. PTSD is a complex reaction to serious stress trauma. For PTSD to develop, the sufferer must have been exposed to a situation in which grave physical harm or sexual violence was present, threatened, or witnessed. Examples of situations that may lead to PTSD include combat, natural disasters, sexual abuse, learning of a traumatic event to a close family member, or viewing the death of another person. The symptoms of PTSD are far more varied than those of a phobia, although some symptoms do overlap. PTSD has different clusters of symptoms, including re-experiencing intrusion symptoms, avoidance symptoms, arousal and reactivity symptoms, and cognitive and mood symptoms. No one can accurately predict who will develop PTSD, phobias, or other disorders after a traumatic experience. Nonetheless, certain specific risk factors make it more likely that a disorder will occur, and these include, but are not limited to, the loss of a loved one, separation or isolation, displacement from home or family, serious harm to self or loved ones. Age, gender, and social class also appear to play a role, with middle-aged females from a lower socioeconomic bracket apparently the most susceptible to developing symptoms. PTSD, phobias, and other disorders can strike anyone. Most people who suffer from PTSD do not experience all of the symptoms. Some of the more commonly experienced symptoms of PTSD are similar to the symptoms of phobias. Likewise, other mental health conditions such as generalized anxiety disorder are sometimes triggered by disasters. It is also possible to develop more than one disorder simultaneously. Therefore, only a trained professional can decide which diagnosis is appropriate. Interestingly, immediately after a disaster is not the only high-risk time for PTSD, phobias, and other disorders to develop. The anniversary of traumatic events can also trigger those disorders. Anniversary reactions may develop slowly in the weeks and months preceding the anniversary date or may come on suddenly and unexpectedly. It is normal to feel some sadness and distress around the anniversary of any major trauma, but severe reactions may signal a disorder. You can manage minor anniversary reactions on your own by planning ahead for the date, staying busy, and talking through your feelings with others. If your symptoms are more severe, however, it is important to seek treatment. Over time, an untreated anniversary reaction could develop into a chronic health disorder. PTSD is the most common disorder following a trauma. However, it is not the only anxiety disorder that may develop. If you have been through a serious event and you are experiencing any unusual or troubling symptoms, visit a mental health professional as soon as possible. There is a few places on my community tab that you can reach out to. I am not going to be uploading any specific links for contacting a counselor or a chat line or anything like that for the phobias, because of the simple fact it falls into the categories that I have already got those links posted. You know, any of the chat lines that I have posted would help. Now, one of the main questions is, what is the difference between PTSD and phobia? Now, they are both connected to fear, but while PTSD is always caused by a traumatic event, a specific phobia can result from either a traumatic event, experiential specific phobia, or non-experiential specific phobia. The experiential specific phobias are extreme and persistent fears of certain objects, situations, activities, or persons. People who suffer from specific phobias work hard to avoid their phobia stimuli, even though they know there is no threat or danger, but they feel powerless to stop their irrational fear. Non-experiential, non-associative specific phobias are caused and activated by stimuli that arouse fear without previous direct or indirect associative learning. Genetic, family, environmental, or developmental factors play an important role in the development of this type of specific phobia. In non-experiential phobias, it is suggested they occur by dysfunction in learning independent fear circuits. Darkness is a good example. It's natural for humans to be afraid of the dark, but most people overcome that fear as they grow older by learning to identify safety in their environment. If a child doesn't develop that trust, they will continue fearing darkness, even if nothing bad has happened in the dark to develop the fear. Experiential specific phobia result from an unfortunate experience the same way as PTSD. The main difference is that PTSD is the more systemic issue that affects the whole brain, while the phobia is very particular to a specific object. Phobia's acquisition is due to classical fear conditioning, while its maintenance is due to operant fear conditioning, which in turn reinforces the avoidance behavior. PTSD activates the amygdala constantly and not only to something specific. People can have phobias without having PTSD, but many people that suffer from PTSD could develop one or more phobias. In the case of PTSD, they are called triggers and may be hard to pinpoint like phobias, but they have a very similar brain response. Now, I hope some of this information has been useful and helpful to somebody. And like I said, if you are in need of assistance, then please reach out to any of the links that I have up that would pertain to mental health. And if you have a phobia or a loved one does, and you want to know more specific information about that one phobia, then please comment below, and I will do my best to get the answers that you seek. Have a good day, everybody.